I don't know if you're like me, but have you ever had that moment where someone tells you to relax and your body does literally the opposite? Like that's happened to me so many times at dance classes when the moment comes to, just improvise, just relax, just let it go. I don't know why the instruction is pretty simple. It should be obvious, but somehow your shoulders are still like super contracted. Your back is super contracted. Your cheeks are clenched. And I'm really, I don't know about you, I'm really often wondering how it's possible to understand exactly what the tension is, to intellectually map your patterns really well, and to still feel unable to relax when it actually matters. And what does it mean to have this awareness if awareness actually changes nothing in the moment that you need it the most? This is for me the embodiment of what is wrong when you're not in your body, when you are not able to connect with your body because you're in your head way too much. So, welcome to this new episode on the Bold Beginner podcast. You're listening to The Bold Beginner, a space for multifaceted women where we explore how to feel at ease in your body when you're being seen. If something here speaks to you, consider subscribing or leaving a review or a comment. It genuinely supports the growth of this space. I've really looked deep into that sentence, just relax, because it always feels so annoying and so bad to me. And I think the problem is that there's an assumption that's hidden inside that phrase. It assumes that your tension is a conscious choice. Basically, it assumes that if you're tight, you are deciding to be tight. And it also assumes as a consequence that relaxation is a direct, command response mechanism, that you're just going to say, hey, oh yeah, you're right, let me just relax, and boom, you're going to relax. But muscular bracing is not really voluntary. And I think that's why it's so annoying, because it makes you feel less. It makes you feel like almost like you're dumb. Like, come on, you should just relax. You should just press on that button and relax. Like it's that easy. When your body braces, it is a protective program that runs beneath your conscious intention. I actually talk about it in another episode that I invite you to go and listen to. But basically, the contraction patterns that comes with bracing is subconscious. It's completely subconscious. It works mostly from the brain, and it operates far more quickly than deliberate thoughts. It works with some parts of the brain that go very fast. If I describe in a bit of details what's happening, research by Joseph Ledoux shows that the sensory information can reach the amygdala via a low road pathway before the cortex has time to interpret it. So what that means in simple words is that your body basically begins preparing for action milliseconds before you are consciously aware of what is happening. So when someone tells you to just relax, for me it's been a lot in dance classes, but it can be basically in any environment that feels unsafe, any class that you're new at, any circle that you're new to, anything that feels unfamiliar and unsafe. If someone is just telling you, oh, just relax, and you're noticing that your body remains very stiff and very contracted, you're not being stubborn. What you're doing is that you're working with a system that has already decided that vigilance is safer than softness in that moment. And usually what it does when these people say, oh, just relax, is that they kind of reinforce this perception of an unsafe environment, because they're making you stand out in the crowd, because they are focusing their attention on you, and all these things tend to make you feel even more uncomfortable and even more unsafe. And so many very intelligent, very perceptive women experience a particular frustration here. They understand the theory. They have read about this uncomfortableness that they feel, about the trauma that they may have. They can identify, they can feel deep down when they're dysregulated. But the problem is that in the moment, in that specific moment, and when the person tells you to just relax, in the moment that you want to be in activation mode, none of that knowledge melts the tension or changes anything. And that's where I think it's important to talk about the hierarchy of the nervous system, because it's quite relevant here. So the cognitive awareness lives primarily in cortical networks. especially in what's called the prefrontal cortex. And that part basically supports reflection, language, perspective. But bracing is coordinated through autonomic circuits, and they evolved long before reflective thought. So basically, when you start perceiving some danger cues that you are in unsafe territory, let's say, you enter what is called a sympathetic mode. And basically, when you're in that mode, your muscle tone increases automatically, your heart rate rises, and your body prepares and tenses up. And all of that happens unconsciously again. So you can maybe understand intellectually that you are safe and still experience sympathetic activation because they don't operate on the same timeline. And that's why you can be aware all you want. You can have all the awareness in the world, but it doesn't really produce any change. It doesn't create any softness in your body or anything, because information alone doesn't help overriding physiology. And the problem is with this micro bracing kind of state is that it's basically a big vicious cycle, because when it becomes a habit, when you tend to brace or micro brace every time that you're in a very unfamiliar situation, if it's become a habit for your body to respond this way, well, basically research has shown that the way you hold your ribs, the posture that you get when you contract yourself like that, it can reinforce that very state that you're trying to exit. And another problem, and that's something that I've been experiencing firsthand, and that's why I've been very interested in that topic for a while, is that there's a perception costs to this habit of microbracing. So to make myself clearer, your interoception work, basically your ability to sense internal bodily states, so to feel whether you're contracted, to understand, to feel each and every muscle, to really understand where your pain is, where you are being tense exactly, to feel each and every fiber of your body, it becomes less precise when tension is constant. And that creates another problem, which is that studies show that the more accurate your interoceptive awareness is, the more or the better it supports emotional regulation. And so that's why basically you can feel very much contained. You can feel like you are put together, like you're functional, but you're not at ease. And this can create the very strong impression that softness is a foreign territory. And I have felt that firsthand, because when I was working on my first business, I reached a point where I wanted to control absolutely everything. I was under so much stress that I did not realize how tense and contracted my body constantly was, to a point that when I got a very, very, very bad disc hernia in my back, and I went to see specialists, some of them told me, like, okay, can you just stand and be fully, decontracted, like just relax entirely so that we can assess your body. And that doctor told me, I'm asking you to relax, but my machine, whatever that was, is showing me clearly that your butt cheeks are constantly contracted. And what it was, and that partly caused my disc hernia, is that I had an imbalance in my hips, in my legs. So basically, I was putting more weight constantly on one of my legs and trying to overcompensate by contracting my butt cheeks, to the point that I did not even realize the difference between my butt cheeks being contracted or fully relaxed. I had to actively work on that for months to understand how to really relax those muscles. And what it was is that when I was working on that business, I had no access to my emotional regulation. I was completely cut from any emotional regulation. And I think that went very much through my body and my disconnect from my body. And I was basically disconnected from just anything. Now, we can actually wonder why letting go can feel unsafe. And that's another layer that is not so often acknowledged. But basically, if bracing has protected you in the past from maybe embarrassment, from feeling, too visible, from being the center of attention, then relaxation can be registered in your body as exposure. And in that case, your system may associate softness with vulnerability. And because that vulnerability in some earlier contexts have maybe led to discomfort, the body tracks those outcomes. And I just want to really be clear that this learning I'm talking about I'm not necessarily talking about like some massive trauma or anything. It can be big traumas, but it can be more subtle things, some repeated micro experiences of being corrected, maybe, while you were being expressive as a kid, um, you were being corrected for it. Maybe when you experimented some things as a kid, you were laughed at, even if it was, laughing at you without very bad intentions. It can happen. It doesn't have to be always very mean intended to have a profound effect. Or maybe you were, repeatedly, subtly dismissed or diminished while you were being enthusiastic. All of these little, very little experiences that, to be honest, probably most of us have had, it shapes our muscular anticipation. And so again, when you're being asked to just relax, your body may interpret that attempt as lowering your armor. And that's one of the reasons why relaxation sometimes produces more anxiety than anything. And that's why, again, this sentence, just relax, annoys me so much, because there's some sort of unconscious bias, I guess, from the person saying that sentence, which is that it's very easy to do. And that, again, you can just turn the switch and switch to a relaxed state. But there's definitely a gap between intention and capacity here. And because they make it sound like it's so easy and you're definitely capable of doing it, many women end up judging themselves. So what you do is that usually you have a strong intention to relax, you set that intention, you try to drop your shoulders very consciously, you try to close your eyes, to exhale, to, do all those things that are great on paper to relax, and within seconds, the tension will return and it feels like a failure. When in fact, your body interprets it very differently. And in that case, it's not a failure for your body, it's a rebound effect. Because like I said, your system has been integrating that this micro bracing is the habit that you should have to preserve yourself and to remain safe based on those repeated lived experiences that I mentioned. And so that state of relaxation that you're trying to achieve, it can only be achieved by practicing over and over again in conditions where your body can verify and understand for itself that nothing bad is going to happen and that it is in fact a safe environment. And for people to keep repeating, just relax, it doesn't make it a safe environment. So it only reinforces your perception that you're not in safe territory. And I gave an exercise in the previous episode, and I'm going to actually repeat it here because repetition is key when it comes to this type of changes, and repetition also in the type of exercises that you should be doing. It's not, there's no magical solution. It's really a matter of repeating these exercises or these approaches until you actually feel a change. But instead of judging yourself, and most importantly, instead of trying to change everything over one exhale or closing your eyes and thinking that breathing deep is going to change everything in one go, no, it doesn't happen like that. So instead of that, try to notice when you brace. And usually for this type of bracing, it's not very difficult to notice. Like I said, I feel my stomach being knotted just rethinking of those moments where people tell me just to relax in dance class. It is very easy to notice exactly what's happening in those moments. And maybe ask yourself internally, but maybe not in the moment. Maybe in the moment, just observe. Observe what's going on and really pay attention to what parts of your body are being tightened. But when the moment's passed and you can reflect on that specific moment where your body became very contracted, very tense, ask yourself, what is this tension preparing me for? What outcome did I think was likely? And the answer is usually very specific, but you have to be honest with yourself because it's not easy to admit that to yourself. But the answer could be embarrassment. I was afraid that starting dancing in front of people, I would mess up and I would look just ridiculous and I would be an embarrassment in front of other people. It could be rejection, that people may reject. I don't know if you have like a big public speaking to do, people may reject you for who you are, or they may reject your authority, or being misunderstood. If you are, willing to talk to a group about something and you're worried that your words are not going to come out clearly, that you're not going to be very articulate about your thoughts, and you are worried to be misunderstood there. Because once you know exactly what your anticipated threat was, and you can really reality test different environment and see that in many cases you are actually in a safe environment. And in those reality tests, it doesn't need to be big shifts, right? Just maybe 2% shifts here and there. Maybe, of course, you won't, like if you're in a dance class, you won't start just suddenly dancing in front of everyone. But instead, you can just try to ground yourself more and more in your body. Maybe take longer exhales slowly, relax your shoulders a little bit more in certain situations until you get to a point down the line where you feel more comfortable in that specific situation that you were in. Because those very small changes, they signal safety and they don't overwhelm your system. So you see, just relax assumes that your body is misbehaving, but it's not misbehaving. It's behaving exactly as it has been trained to behave. So it's really good to be gentle with ourselves as well, because bracing is actually a very intelligent way that our body has found to adapt. And so I really would like you, when you're next in this situation, to be more gentle with yourself. And if relaxation feels impossible, maybe, it would be good to ask yourself a more compassionate question than the usual, why can't I let go? Why can I not just relax? But instead, maybe another question could be, what would need to feel really true in my body for letting go to make sense? And that approach is way more gentle to your body because it puts it at the center and it really wonders what is it that you need for your body to believe that it's safe enough. Because if it feels like it's safe enough, then you won't require to force softness. It will just happen naturally.